Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled Karen got me swatted after I destroyed her in a video game. She claimed that I have a hostage in real life and the situation got very scary. This Karen actually tried to get me killed and I honestly don't know what to do. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. The title story starts like this. Do you ever not know somebody's a Karen until they reveal it in the worst way possible? I did not know that was a thing and assumed that Karens could be spotted right away and avoided in some way. You can tell I was very wrong about that because I interacted with a Karen for about half a year before realizing the monster that she truly was. So I play a video game with my friends a lot called Counter-Strike Global Offensive. It gets shorted to CSGO by almost everybody who plays it, so I'm gonna call it that here. Anyway, I play on a team with my friends and we kind of made friends with another group we like to play against. They are 4 other people, but the only important one to this story is Karen. We would play online matches against each other a lot and most of the time we came out pretty evenly. It became a balance of being a lot of fun while not being against a team that was too easy or too hard. For some gamers that's like a dream to find another group that fits so well. I just want to note that since this was an online game, it means that I never met or even saw the faces of Karen and her team. We strictly just played online and never discussed personal information with each other. For about 5 months it was going great and then we found out about a small tournament taking place where the winning team would get $100. It was not about the money really, since splitting it meant only getting like $25 each player. It seemed really fun though, and if we won, a good chance to show off a little bit. We told Karen's team about the tournament the next time we played against them, and they decided to join in too. We would make a ton of jokes that we would end up playing each other in the finals, and it would be the most intense match ever. Honestly, I did not expect to get far because there are people out there way better than us at this game that join these tournaments. With the way luck had it though, we ended up facing each other in the 3rd match we had to play. It was honestly a little weird playing against them and not being able to talk while we did it. We were used to chatting between matches and before we started. With the tournament though, we just had to jump right into the game and play. To be honest, it was really close and we just barely managed to beat them and move on into the tournament. The rest of the matches don't matter at all, but I just want to note that my team did not win, so it was not like we got any money. I did get to look over the statistics afterwards and even replay footage and saw that I ended up coming across Karen and killing her a lot. That night I was online and I saw that Karen was online too. I turned on my microphone and could not get hello out before she started yelling at me, screaming that she couldn't believe I would do this to her and she needed that prize money. She seemed to take it personally that I killed her a lot in the game and decided that she was gonna get revenge on me for playing a game the way it was intended, I guess. So really quick, for those of you that don't know what doxing is, it technically means finding somebody's personal information and posting it online. While Karen did not post it online, I don't really know what else to call what she did, so I'm gonna call it doxing. She started telling me all of this information about me that I never gave her, which made me realize she somehow got a hold of it. This was scary because this stranger now had things like my address and phone number. She told me that it was my fault for killing her and she was gonna make sure that I learned never to do something like that again. Since she had my address, she called the police and I could hear every word of it. She muted me though, so even if I yelled, there was no way for the police to hear my side of the conversation. She started crying and saying that there was a dangerous man and she heard gunshots coming from my house. She told them that I had a hostage and they had to come and do something before I killed them. I swear that if Karens wanted to use their powers for good, they could be something useful like an actress or storyteller. Instead, she just decides to be an a-hole. I had zero clue what to do and basically froze like a deer in the headlights in panic. I knew she just swatted me and there was nothing I could think of doing to stop the onslaught I knew would happen. I've heard about that and even seen videos of swatting before, so I knew how scary they could be. What I did not expect was it to happen so fast when my door was smashed open and the entire room being filled with smoke. I was thrown to the ground and felt a foot on my back, which really hurt. I knew that the best thing to do was to not struggle, and once they let me up and things got quiet, I could tell them it was a horrible prank without getting even more hurt. The last thing I wanted was to struggle and end up with a bullet in my back instead of just a foot. They asked me about the guns and hostages and I told them the entire story. That I beat Karen in a tournament and she called the police right in front of me. The only issue was that she called from an untraceable phone and I did not have any information about her to give to them. They warned me about giving out information and explained to them that I was doxxed and did not actually tell Karen anything. The worst part about an online Karen is that there were not much the SWAT team or police could do about it. They could attempt to work from the phone she called on, or maybe even through the game and console information that I did have to give to them. I befriended that entire team, including Karen, on my Xbox, so there was a sliver of hope. They asked if I wanted to go see a doctor, but I felt okay and just wanted to take 2 Advil for my back pain. I was angry and upset from the entire thing and could not believe any gamer would act like this. When you play a game like CSGO, you expect to get shot and killed in the game at some point. That is just something that happens and nobody is a perfect player that never dies. Even if their game did win, I know they wouldn't have beaten the entire team they had to face that we lost to. Now I worry about people being a Karen and me just not knowing about it yet. They could be anywhere and it makes me wary now of people in general. One huge idiot, Karen, tried to get me almost killed by a SWAT team and ruin my favorite game of all time because she was mad I played how I was supposed to. And by the way, Ripe Stars, after reading this story I was a little bit confused because OP mentioned Xbox and CSGO is only on PC. However, OP clarified that they just play other games with Karen on Xbox as well, not just PC games like CSGO. So that means that he and Karen have played a lot of games together and there should be some kind of bond or something. But I guess some people just really hate losing. Anyway, the next one is titled, Yes, I Know the Owner Well. So I used to work overnight at a large motel as night manager. One night a number of years ago there was a wedding reception. One of the guests came up to the desk early in the evening and bragged about knowing one of the owners of the motel. I listened politely but really did not care. At 2 in the morning the reception was closed down. The guests went to their rooms while those who didn't have rooms should have left the property. Less than half an hour later I started getting noise complaints. It turns out that the same guest took a group back to his room to continue the party. I stood in the doorway to the room and announced in a loud voice that the party was over. Everyone who is a registered guest needs to go to their rooms. Those who are not guests of the hotel need to leave the property. You have 15 minutes to clear out, otherwise I'll call the police and evict everyone. If I do that, there will be no refunds. The guy from earlier came to the door and told me he would get me fired if I went through with what I said. My response, then I will be fired for doing my job. That's okay. I ended up calling the police and clearing everyone out. Then I wrote a report on the incident including the name of the guest. I sent copies to the front desk manager, the general manager and to my boss. A few days later I was told that the guest was banned from ever coming back to the motel again for any reason. He did indeed know one of the owners. And when the owner found out what he attempted to do, he dropped the friendship immediately. The next one is titled, Karen Goes Above and Beyond. As mentioned in another post, my dad is the owner/CEO of a group of pharmacies but still chooses to work full-time there. I was 10 at the time this story is about 8 years old and a very funny memory. As both my parents were working full-time, I would spend a lot of time at the pharmacies before and after school. So one particular day I was sitting on a chair at a desk in the store just playing with a toy car. Next thing I know, there is a small kid which could not be above the age of 6 next to me asking for my car. Quite oblivious, having not seen him before, 10-year-old me thought he was one of the pharmacist's children and tried to talk with him. Suddenly, a 40-year-old woman in a dress who is definitely not supposed to be behind the counter is standing next to him, gesturing for me to give him the car. Credit to my dad, he saw her immediately and asked her what her and her child were doing behind the counter. The Karen responds that I saw this child here and decided that mine should play with him, but he is not giving my child the toy. My dad replies, "Ma'am, that's my kid and your child are not allowed back here." The Karen then starts to turn red. Just because he's your child does not mean that he gets special privileges. "I want to see your manager so I can complain about how you are treating my kid," Karen said. My dad smiled to himself and went to the back of the shop and walked back out saying, "Hi, I'm the manager. What seems to be the problem?" Note that there is a large sign that says what pharmacist is in charge at any given time. The Karen sees this and then says, "I would like to see the pharmacist in charge." My dad smiles again and walks to the back and repeats what he did before. The Karen is visibly shaking at this point and screams, "How dare you treat me like this? I know the owner and I will have him fire you." My dad is actually surprised at this comment and says to her, "How do you know him?" The Karen, thinking she has my dad at the ropes, smirks and says, "We are family friends. His kids are friends with mine and he would not have a problem with me leaving my kids here." My dad then asks me, "Have you ever seen this kid before?" I reply with a shake of the head, and then my dad points at his name tag and then at a plaque with the owner's name on it, and it dawns on her. The person who said kids were friends had his kid right next to hers the whole time. Embarrassed, she grabs her kid and immediately leaves the store, having already received her medication. And the next one is titled Entitled Honeymoon Couple. So I fly a lot and I have this annoying thing that makes me need to pee a lot while on flights, every hour or less. And by the way guys, this person would be my biggest nightmare because I sleep very well on flights, and if that person needs to get up all the time, sleeping would definitely be a pain. Anyway, that's why I always book an aisle seat, so that I don't need to keep bothering others to get up for me, especially on long-haul flights. A few years back, flying from Berlin to NY with Air Berlin, I tried reserving an aisle seat, but the only one available was a premium one. I added the almost $100 to the ticket price just so that I can get an aisle seat. This couple boards. They were apparently on their honeymoon, but for some reason did not think to select seats in advance, so they had gotten assigned with separate seats at check-in. One of them got a free premium seat next to the window next to me, and the other a middle seat a few rows back. EB attempts to jam herself onto the seat next to me without asking me to get up or move. At this point, she is already angry at something. She then immediately clicks the call flight attendant button and huffs and puffs at every passenger boarding as if they are grabbing her potential seats. As a flight attendant walks by, EB goes full on with her honeymoon, and that it is not right that the airline did not automatically place her and her husband together or give them both a free upgrade, and that she demands to sit with her husband. The flight apparently is fully booked, no available seats and no easy ability to place the lovely couple together. The flight attendant at this point, being polite, looks at me and says, "Sir, would you mind switching seats with the lady's husband?" I ask what seat he is in, and it's a middle seat, economy row. Not wanting to explain my whole pee issues in public, I say, "Sorry, but I really needed to be in an aisle seat." The flight attendant gets pissed at me that she now needs to deal with it. The EB starts talking loudly in a different language with her husband, who is a few rows back, huffing and puffing and trying to make a scene. A few minutes later, and about 3 flight attendants working on it, while EB is yelling at them, her husband, but has yet to say a single word to me. She is moved to sit by her husband, and some people are moved around for it. I get evil looks from the flight attendants during the entire flight, and I pee every hour. Air Berlin goes bankrupt, but not sure if this incident is related. Or well, is it? P.S. I would not have minded giving up the premium seat. All I cared about was the damn aisle seat. And the next one is titled Wedding Dress Issues. In April last year, my 19-female grandma let everyone in her will inherit most things early. She is still alive, which was almost everything except for things like her house, etc. I inherited my grandma's wedding dress from the 50s or 60s since I loved it so much when I first saw it. I'm not getting married anytime soon, but I plan to in the future, and I wanna wear my grandma's dress to my wedding. My cousin, Jake, 26 male, is getting married to his fiancée Lily, 25 female, late next year. Jake reached out to me last week, which was weird because we are not close at all. He said that he had seen the dress before I inherited from our grandma, and he wanted his fiancée to wear it to their wedding. I told him that the answer would probably be no, and he was pretty upset about it. I decided to hear him out, and he said that his fiancée would tell me her plans for alterations and stuff. Lily called me the next day, and to sum it up, she pretty much wanted to cut up the dress, dye it, and completely change the bodice. I told Lily that her plans were not okay with me, and she pretty much said, "I'm just gonna give it to my future daughter and daughter-in-law, so I wouldn't want you wearing it." I was shocked by this person's entitlement, and I told her since it was my grandma's dress, I would not want her wearing it, as it would take away from the sentimentality for me. I also told her that even if I did let her wear the dress, there was no chance that I would let her keep it. Lily said it would be great since the dress would be free and her mom could do the alterations. I hung up when she started crying because I couldn't take any more of this girl's crap. Jake then blew up my phone and told me that I am such a witch for making Lily cry and I shouldn't have made them think that there was a chance they could have the dress. I told Jake that at first I might have been a chance, but by the time Lily called, I had made my decision. Jake then blew up saying that I shouldn't rob his fiancée of the opportunity for the perfect dress. I told him that the reason for my decision was that I was planning to wear it to my future wedding and that the dress was important to me and I didn't want to wear a dress that had been cut up and worn by somebody else so recently. He said some BS like, our grandma might not even be there when you get married, so why not let Lily wear it? I texted him, I might have gone too far but I was pissed, saying that Lily was not part of the family and that the dress meant nothing to her and did not have the value to her that it had to me, and I didn't want someone to take that away from me. I called my grandma about this and she said that I should not give it to them as she did not want Jake's fiancée to wear the dress because she barely knew her. Since then, Jake and Lily have both been blowing up my messages and Instagram DMs, and Lily's parents even DM'd me, but I have all ignored it and it's just them being pissed and begging for the dress. Am I the a-hole Reddit? And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to hear from you. Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? Let me know in the comments. And someone on Reddit said, not the a-hole, I cannot imagine anyone would think that you are. Weird that Jake had seen the dress before and that he wanted his bride to wear it, and said bride want to alter it completely. It sounds like they want a free dress. Your grandmother, your dress. Love it and wear it. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. The insane level of entitlement from Jake and especially Lily is beyond belief. So, this story is about a property I own but rent out. This may sound strange, but I don't think I could afford to live there these days. It has become somewhat exclusive. I have used dollars here because it is what most people reading this will relate to. This doesn't take place in the US and I've given an approximate dollar value for local currency. This is going to be very long. Background: a million years ago my property was part of a large farm. I bought it about 30 years ago, long after the farm was broken up, but before there was any development near it. The piece of land I got was near the back entrance that joined into a dirt road that ran past. The more expensive plots were near the tarred road in the front. I originally bought a large chunk of the land intending to do some farming, but that never happened. About 20 years ago, some of the owners got organized, we will call them the Organized Owners, OO, and had the area designated as a municipal suburb. The municipality agreed to put in tarred roads, water and electricity if a certain percentage of the properties were developed. A construction company linked to the OO went around contacting the owners who had land but no buildings, offering to build houses for us at a very reasonable price, contingent on them getting a certain minimum amount of people signing up. While this was happening, one of the OOs approached me and offered to buy half of my property. I agreed, and the money I got for the sale, which was about 4 times what I had paid for the entire chunk of land 10 years prior, combined with a small loan from the bank, gave me what I needed to pay for a house to be built, and it was a fairly large and nice house too. I stayed in the house for a few years and my mom moved in with me. I had decided to subdivide the property again and build her a house next to mine, but unfortunately an undiagnosed tumor took her before the house could even be started. Well, it was diagnosed, but too late to do anything. Soon after she died, we moved out of the house and started renting it out. About a few weeks before we moved out, the OO I had sold the land to started talking about starting an HOA. I was not interested and left soon after. About 2 years later, the neighbor OO contacted me. There were 2 roads entering the area these days, the original tarred road that was near where the farmhouse had been and was entered from a fairly busy main road, and my dirt road back entrance, which was now a tarred entrance from a wide but not very busy municipal road. The HOA was trying to get the old farm road blocked off to improve security and decrease through traffic, and wanted the road next to my property to be the main and only entrance to the HOA community. And they were pressuring me to join. I said no, and I was adamant, and eventually they accepted it, but they told me that they wanted to have a sign near the road welcoming people to the neighborhood, and the only practical place to put it was on the edge of my property. They also wanted to build a little guard hut and have a security guard permanently monitoring who went in and came out, and they wanted to build his shed on my property. We came to an agreement whereby they would mow the lawn and pay the equivalent of about $35 per month in exchange for the land they needed. And by the way guys, is it just me, or does that sound really cheap at just $35 a month? Anyway, I was very happy with this arrangement since the property was fairly large and it didn't really cost them anything since they already had a full-time gardening service servicing the HOA. This all happened over a decade ago. They eventually got the other main road blocked off and the HOA is paying for a rent-a-cop to be permanently stationed close to my property, as well as mowing my lawn and paying me enough money for takeaways for the family each month. I am occasionally contacted by members of the HOA to get me to sign up, but I am really not interested. My property has been rented to the same tenant for all these years and everything there is going well for me. Until about 3 years ago, when someone scared the crap out of my tenant's young daughter by making strange noises and shooting a gun close to her bedroom window 3 or 4 times over about a month. This scared my tenant and I guess it scared the HOA because they and my tenant contacted me with a proposal. I joined the HOA and they give me exclusions from the HOA rules, including exclusions from paying the monthly fees, and in addition they will build a wall around the entire HOA neighborhood, including electric fencing and security cameras. And ripe stars, in my opinion, that sounds more like an HOA prison than a neighborhood, because honestly, who in their right mind would want an electric fence around the neighborhood? Anyway, they told me that they had wanted to do this for a while but were unwilling to build the wall on property that was not in the HOA. I couldn't see the downside and so I agreed. The next chapter of the story is titled The Dishonest Dealings. It took a little over a year to build the wall and get everything completed, which was quite fast. And then a month to the day after everything was done, my tenant got an HOA warning about his dogs barking. He told the HOA that while the property was in the HOA, it was exempt from the rules. The HOA told him that they had cancelled the exemptions and that he had 30 days to comply. He contacted me and I opened some mail I had gotten from the HOA. I had ignored it since I was supposed to be exempt from the rules and fees. Man, did I get a surprise. They had retroactively cancelled the exemptions and were claiming that I pay late fees going back over a year, that the easement agreement had been cancelled and that they were retroactively cancelling it a year back because the HOA contract allowed them to use small unused portions of HOA members' land for the common goods for free. In addition, they wanted me to refund them the money they had paid for the easement over that period. Number 4, that I owed them money for the garden service mowing the large lawn, and number 5, that I would be fined for each infraction my tenant failed to remedy. This started an expensive process involving lawyers and the court system that ended with the judge telling me that what the HOA had done was mostly legal and they had the right to revoke the exemptions, but that they had to give me 30 days notice. As I was walking to my car, the neighbor OO, the one who bought half my land so many years ago, told me that I was stupid to have refused to join when the HOA started, as I could have been a founder member, whatever that means, and that next time I should be sure to understand the documents I sign before signing them. And now we come to the malicious compliance. Neighbor OO was right. I should have read the contract better. Also, I was interested in what it meant to be a founding member. Spoiler, nothing. So when I got home, I grabbed the HOA contract I had signed as well as the other documentation they had provided me with and started reading. I was determined to break every rule I could find a loophole to break. I did not get past the first page. While the street address of the property is used to identify it for all practical purposes, in the city records it has a unique property number that has to be used on legal records. When my mom moved in, I had subdivided the remaining property but had not yet started building on it. And when I gave the HOA the easement all those years ago, it had been on the property that I had sliced off for my mom. And when the HOA set up the contract, they had simply used the property number from the easement. The next afternoon, the neighbor OO delivered and had me sign for 2 documents, one telling me that my exemptions would expire in 30 days and one letting me know that the easement would no longer be required after 30 days. I think he was being a bit malicious here because I lived about an hour away from the property and he drove out himself. Now onto the revenge. Exactly 30 days to the hour after the HOA had given me the 30 days notice, I knocked on the neighbor OO's door, did I mention he was the president of the HOA, and had him sign for 2 documents. The first was that I planned to build a house on my HOA property, which confused him, and the second was a notice that they had 30 days to remove from the property the guard shed, the parts of the electric boom that were on my property, as well as the sign. He tried to engage me, but I ignored him, climbed into my car and drove off. Early the next morning, I got a call from the HOA lawyer who explained to me that their junk would be staying on my property since it was in an unused part of my land. I explained that I was building a house there and that the land would not be unused anymore. I could hear the smirk as he told me that building a second house to be spiteful would not be accepted by the courts. I sure hope he could hear the smirk in my voice when I told him that the property in question did not have a house and was in fact barely large enough for a house to be built and would not be large enough for any extraneous buildings. I then told him to go look up the property in question and call me back. I had sliced off just enough to be legal, which was enough to build a small house. It took them just under 5 days to get back to me. Their lawyer told me that the terms of the easement meant that I could not cancel without their permission, so I emailed him a photo of the document they sent to me cancelling the easement. That afternoon, neighbor OO invited me to lunch, his treat, to discuss the problem. I said no thanks. He extended the offer again 2 days later and again I said no thanks. Others of the original OO contacted me to try to talk. Some sounded aggressive, some sounded sympathetic. I said no thanks to each of them. Eventually the lawyer phoned and asked if we could come to some sort of arrangement. I asked what he had in mind and he told me that he was prepared to discuss exclusions in exchange for access to my property. So I said no thanks and please don't call me again. About 9 days before their 30 days was up, I got a call from a different lawyer. He said he wanted to negotiate a surrender, his words not mine. I agreed to meet him at his office the next day. I had already had documents drawn up and the meeting was as simple as me giving him the documents and him reading them over. My new easement offer was the following. Number 1, included everything offered by the old easement offer. Number 2, I changed the line mow the lawn to get the property to HOA standards and keep it there since it was now in the HOA. Number 3, would cost them about $500 per month instead of $35. This amount would increase with inflation. The previous contract didn't include that bit. And number 4, when cancelled for whatever reason, the HOA would have to pay me a cancellation fee of around $7,500. Number 5, the contract automatically terminated 30 days after 1. Any disciplinary action was taken against me, my tenant, or the property. Number 2, any complaints were levied by the HOA against the property. Or number 3, any legal action was taken against the property by anyone in the HOA. Number 6, that lawyer who had offered to negotiate surrender would be allowed to mediate any disputes between us at HOA's expense, and that number 7, the HOA would pay all my legal fees if any legal action was taken against me. I had deliberately left some insane things in there so that I could appear to concede some points or be negotiated down when the HOA got indignant about the points I actually cared about. The lawyer didn't look happy. He said that my proposal sounded unfair, but that he'd have the HOA president look at them. I reminded him that in 8 days I would be setting a group of men armed with sledgehammers and anger management issues loose on whatever of theirs was still on my property. That evening I got an irate call from the HOA president. He told me he was never going to sign the new contract. I said okay, and he then told me that I was charging too much per month and that it should be at the same rate as the previous contract. I pointed out that when I signed the previous contract, the area was under development and there was at least one other road leading in and out, but now there was only mine. And besides, mine was now developed with everything they needed. He told me that I was forcing them to sign a document they didn't want to sign. I told him that he was free not to sign it. He whined about everything he could think of and then eventually told me I would be hearing from his lawyer. The next morning, Surrender Lawyer called to ask if I would be willing to come to their offices to sign the contract. I agreed, and when I got there that afternoon, I learned that Surrender Lawyer was not a lawyer, but a paralegal. He handed me the contract and asked me to sign it. He laughed when I told him I would have to read through it first to make sure nothing was changed and mumbled something that sounded like, "I'm sure you would." I read the contract and nothing had been changed, not a single thing. And the HOA president had signed it, with the Surrender paralegal signing as witness. I looked at him and said, "Why did he sign this? It was stupid to sign it." And the paralegal looked at me and said, "I started telling him that signing it would be a bad decision, but he told me I wasn't being paid to think or give legal advice and to shut up, so I shut up." I said, "Do you understand what he has signed here?" He looks at me and nods. He said, "I asked him if I should have one of the lawyers look at it before giving it to you, and he told me that we had already built enough for this, and that he'd sign it and sue me after the easement was safe." This happened about a year and a half ago, and it took 6 months for the HOA to find out how screwed they were. They wanted to sue me, but their lawyers explained to them that there was no way to win. Even if the court sided with them, all they would get is the easement contract voided, and they didn't think that the court would side with them. The lawyers were adamant about one thing though: the HOA could not live with the "HOA pays my legal fees if legal action was taken against me," and since it didn't limit the people taking legal action against me to the HOA as worded, the HOA would be forced to pay for my legal fees if anyone took legal action against me. They argued that the courts would probably not enforce that since the context of the agreement was to do with the HOA, and I told them I was prepared to find out since the HOA would definitely be the ones taking action against me if they challenged it. I eventually signed an addendum to the contract that said that the neighbor OO HOA president would personally pay all my legal fees unless he held no position at all in the HOA, and that the HOA would pay all legal fees if the HOA took legal action against me. He resigned from the HOA at the end of that meeting. I politely told him in front of everyone that he should not sign documents unless he understands what he is signing. He didn't look pleased. It came out during the mediation. You cannot imagine how happy the lawyers were that their paralegal was mediating, that without the ability to control access to the HOA neighborhood through the security boom, partially on my property, the HOA had become a gated community a number of years back. The HOA would be in breach of their own articles and would be dissolved. I also learned, should have been obvious to me, that all the security cameras were wired and all terminated in the guardhouse/guard shed. So basically, it was my way or the end of the HOA. That first mediation was really quite funny. My paralegal looked more than a little glum as we assembled, and he called everyone to order. I suspected that he had been told to work against me, so I took the initiative. I reminded everyone there that I had agreed to let paralegal mediate, but that I had agreed to no arbitration at all. If I didn't feel like the proceedings were fair, I would leave and they could go ahead and sue. Paralegal brightened up and things actually went quite well. I am writing this after getting home from the latest mediation. I built a paddling pool for the neighborhood dogs, as in I made it myself. I dug a hole, packed it with stone and added a concrete finish. It was my first attempt, and if I say so myself, it looked, well, terrible. The HOA called for a mediation meeting. What they do now instead of taking official action, I have declined their mediation requests in the past, in which they told me as nicely as they could that the paddling pool was an eyesore right at the entrance of the HOA. I asked them to create a list of what needed to be fixed and how it needed to be fixed to give to me at the next meeting. The list was extensive. It basically required the pool to be rebuilt from scratch, and I asked them if there was any way to reduce costs on the work they needed to get it up to HOA standards, and they assured me there was not. I thanked them, pulled out a copy of the agreement where they had agreed to get the property to HOA standards, which I had highlighted, and handed it to them with the list. I told them the HOA usually preferred if these things were dealt with within 30 days. They started arguing until the mediator reminded them that they could not force me to comply without causing the easement to end. I should mention that their lawyers usually no longer attend these things. They said they would get it done. I also learned a lot about neighbor 00 today. I found out that neighbor 00 sold his property about 3 months back and is apparently leaving the country for Australia. I found out that the HOA had successfully sued him for a crapload of money that they had lost to his mismanagement as part of his vendetta against me. I also learned that he had a vendetta against me. I have no idea what I did to upset him. I'm not sure if I will screw with the HOA anymore. I already think I am so close to breaking them. The only thing stopping them from cancelling the contract is the massive financial loss if they do. I guess a lot depends on how they treat me and my tenants going forward. Also, I do like the monthly payments though, so I'm motivated to play nice. Note, I never intended to go all nuclear revenge. My plan was for a little petty revenge. It is the stupidity and greed and bully mentality of the neighbor 00 that turned this into nuclear revenge. I can only take minimal credit, although I did take it and run with it when I got the opportunity, so that's something I guess. And with this we have reached the end of the video. However, I want to ask you for a favor. If you have watched until here, please check out my new channel called The Readers, where I and other voice actors post daily stories that you will very much enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow.